So at the end of that transmission build video, I told you all that my car had caught fire. And not for the usual reasons that these sorts of builds catch fire. It wasn't questionable fuel lines or bad plumbing or questionable wiring. All came down to this thing and the ironic desire to protect the paint on my boot lid. Now, you see, I'd been driving the car about for about 2 days, a couple of long drives. The last drive that I did before I put that on was about 2.5 hours, all through back roads, down motorways, everything, not even steam from the back of the car. Everything was perfect, just stopping and checking. Throughout the days before that, I'd been doing just a little bit further each go. So the first one was just down, round the nearby streets and home. The next one, down through the town and home. The next one, wee bit outside the town and home, and so on and so on. Just constantly checking everything that I knew could cause problems. Everything was rock solid. However, I hadn't got around to building my big heat shield yet. A nice big solid heat shield around it just to protect all of the nice delicate bits that are in the boot. And also because technically when this was an operating garage, it was actually a body shop, which you might be able to tell from the Mark II Jag behind me, did sort of car restorations and all that. So after growing up being shouted at for so much as breathing too close to paintwork, you end up with a bit of a respect for it. And if you put paint through too many heat cycles, it discolours a bit. I mean, I don't mean like going full on black and charcoal, I mean it just changes, so it's a different shade from the paint around it. Now I wanted to avoid that. And the way I thought I would do it is, until I could do my proper heat shielding, was with this thing. Now this is a turbo blanket. This particular turbo blanket had been sitting about in the garage for about 2 years and in the house for 1 year. My dad had bought it for a previous project and never ended up using it. He used one that, instead of having all this black stuff around the outside, was just the sort of fiberglass matting. And it was perfectly fine. Lots of people use these and they're perfectly fine. This one is quite a cheap eBay thing, which is probably why it never ended up in the car. But it was in the house, looked brand new, and I thought I'd stick it on temporarily just to protect my paint. That turned out to be a mistake. Within 25 minutes of driving, the thing had caught fire. Now I'd stopped and checked it halfway through because I'd noticed it was steaming a little bit. You see, these sort of fiberglass things and exhaust wrap and all that, they steam a bit as the binding agents burn off them. All seemed fine. I even gave it a poke to make sure it was fine. Everything seemed fine. Driving along a bit, it was steaming a bit more, and I was at the point where I was looking for a lay-by to pull in, and the steam turned black because it was smoke. We got out, popped the boot pretty much immediately, jumped out. I was with my friend, who then at this point pointed out, TJ, the car's on fire, and started backing away, as you should. A lady coming the other way, she stopped, and she's kind of doing the usual sort of, you need to get away from the car, which, as you should. I've said as you should a lot of times here because as you should isn't what I done. What I did was I got right into the passenger compartment, reached behind my seats for the 5-litre bottle of water I was carrying. You see, I was a little bit worried about coolant leaks, so I've been carrying some extra water to top it up. I got this open, got some pretty nasty burns on my fingertips in the process because this is where the fire was coming out of, and then just started dumping water right onto the turbo blanket. At the time, this is the only thing that was on fire. Now normally these don't really catch fire. I mean, the whole point of them is that they're heat resistant. They're going on the hottest part of your car to prevent it from making other stuff hot. What usually happens with these is if they get oil or another flammable liquid in them, they act a bit like a candle. It soaks it all up. Even now there's still a lot of crap coming off this, sorry. They soak up flammable liquids and then they act like a candle, where this is the wick. However, my oil system is solid. Like, I've checked everything, I've been checking it constantly, everything was dry. And if an oil system had caused it, well, I've got quite a lot of manifold heat wrap there. And it's a lot closer to all of the oil sources around it than this is. So if that had caused the fire, the heat wrap would have been a much worse burn than this stuff. And the manifold, there was nothing going on with it. Totally dry, no fire, nothing. Just this. And the time it took me to actually put this out, because I was dumping loads and loads of water onto it, like a moron, it was able to set the top of the oil drain hose on fire. Luckily, the oil drain hose doesn't really have that much oil in it, and it's not under pressure, so all that really happened was the pipe melted. However, if that had done it to the oil feed line or something like that, that would have been a proper fire. Now what I then did was another person had thought, he was a mechanic, he had some tools, and I was kind of shouting, have you got any juice, have you got any water? My friend was over at the nearby stream at the side of the road, filling up all of the bottles. I was throwing them while I'd run back to grab them, dump them on this again. The mechanic passed me this big long screwdriver. I stabbed it through my turbo blanket and launched it out the back of the car. If I had done that right at the start, this would have been a tiny problem. I'd have had to replace some engine wiring and this thing. Because I spent so much time messing about trying to put this out, panicking, the top of the oil drain line was able to melt. The oil in it didn't catch fire, it was just the line melted off. If the oil had caught fire, that would have been much worse. But as the fire had been hitting my aluminium boot lid, it's aluminium so it didn't really catch fire, but it spreads the fire out. And in all that time messing about, the fire had spread to my rear clam. I didn't actually realise this at first because as far as we could tell, there was nothing burning. There was still smoke, but nothing burning. Until eventually, the fire started coming back out of the bottom, where all of the plastic settings around this had caught, and everything underneath the spoiler had also caught. So then fire starts pouring out of my number plate lights here and my brake light here. Oh, hang on. Okay, so we can add the brake light to the list of melted things in this car. Pouring out the number plate lights and the brake lights, and the whole back of the clam had gone up because of the amount of time I spent messing around. Eventually though, we kept on pouring more water on it, and a farmer going to take water to his horses at the next field up, which was incredibly lucky, stopped with two big 25 litre big jug kind of gallon drum things. We dumped those on. Eventually the fire was totally out. I breathed in a lot of smoke, a lot of bad smoke. Fiberglass is a horrible material. Don't get me wrong, I like working with it more than metal because I know it a bit better, but you need to wear proper respiratory equipment when you're actually doing fiberglass laying. You need to wear proper respiratory equipment when you're sanding it. You need to wear proper respiratory equipment when you look at it funny. And the full thing was burning. My head was about here, dumping water into there, and all of the smoke was coming right at me. So I've breathed in a lot of that. My throat's still a bit sore. We're only 3 days after the fire. Back of my nose is also horrible because for some reason when I was breathing it in I thought to myself, don't breathe through your mouth, it's bad for your lungs. So I breathed through my nose instead. But yeah, so under here took most of the damage. Most of the damage is to the bodywork. There's a bit of engine wiring damaged. My wastegate I hope is alright. I think it's just the anodizing that's been taken off of the cap. We've got the rear lighting loom, that's damaged. You've seen the brake light, number plate lights. Yeah, this whole thing needs taken off and done. A few other jobs. Yeah, so I think maybe just whatever brand of Chinesium this is made of was a bit more flammable than others because I've not been able to find any flammable liquid that would have spread onto this. I do notice that all of the stitching and that on the sides is burnt out, which I feel says something. But yeah, so I've got a bit of a rebuild to do. I feel like I had more to say, but I've kind of lost track of what I was saying. I just keep on seeing more massive bits of soot and more burnt stuff everywhere I look. I'll probably have cut in footage of just the engine bay and that. So carry a fire extinguisher. If I'd had one, that would have been a 10-second fire. The worst of the damage would have been maybe a bit of engine wiring in that thing. If I had just launched that out of the engine bay in the first place, that would have been the extent of the damage, but I spent that much time messing about that loads of other stuff get damaged. Kind of feel like I'm just repeating myself here now. There's more bits bubbled there. The actual structure of this clam is done. Like before you probably could have sat in this spoiler. Now if you lean on it, you can feel it properly go to give. Yeah, carry a fire extinguisher. And obviously the sensible option for if your car catches fire, get away from it. Don't go near it. It's a ticking time bomb of petrol and death. But if, like me, you have built your car over several years, you probably won't listen to that. So my advice would be carry a fire extinguisher, and if there is anything in your engine bay that is on fire that can be not in your engine bay, launch it out of the engine bay. Don't try and put it out while it sits there setting other stuff on fire. Yeah, I'll do a video on the resuscitation of my poor little Lotus here. Thanks for watching, I guess. Carry a fire extinguisher.